It's late at night. You've been hit by a drunk driver. Your car is smoking, your ears are ringing, and there's something wrong with your leg. You're home alone when you think you hear what might be footsteps walking around outside your house. And was that the door handle rattling? You're visiting family when all of a sudden they're behaving oddly, pale and sweating, slurring their words. Who are you going to call? My purpose today is to inform you when it's appropriate to call 911, what you will need to know when you do, and why it's important to listen to the dispatcher. In addition to researching 911 operations, I worked for Callaway County, Missouri as a dispatcher taking emergency and non-emergency calls for a year and a half before I moved to Washington. And it's an unfortunate fact of life that everyone here will likely need to call 911 at least once. I'll start first with reasons to call 911 before moving on to what information you should be able to provide, then ending with why it's important to listen to the dispatcher's instructions. And with our roadmap in place, let's begin with what exactly constitutes an emergency. Sometimes it's easy to know when to call 911, such as my earlier examples, but sometimes it's not so clear. To start, there are many reasons that someone might need to call 911, but they all have the same qualifying components: the need for speed. According to the Washington Department of Social and Health Services Bulletin from 2019, you should call 911 if the condition is life or limb threatening. The condition could worsen quickly on the way to the hospital, and if the person needs skills, medication, or equipment that paramedics carry as soon as possible. The official King County website, updated this year, expands on this by including fires, crimes in progress, and other life-threatening situations. In short, if you feel that your life or someone else's life or livelihood is in danger, that is an appropriate time to call 911. Now, some may wonder, what if I happen to accidentally dial 911, or my child calls and there's not an emergency? What if I determine I don't need 911 after all? Per the National 911 Program website updated in 2023, don't hang up. This could make officials think that there is an emergency and send responders to your location. Simply stay on the line and explain to the call taker what happened. Although in some districts, according to local practices, they may still send a first responder to your location to confirm it was an accident. In short, first responders understand that we're human. We all make mistakes, but they also understand that there are times that someone may not be able to explicitly state that there is an emergency. And from my own experience, it is only someone who becomes a repeat offender who's going to be punished, since abusing 911 is considered a criminal offense. Now that you know when to call 911, let's move on to what you need to know when you do. There are several key pieces of information that first responders need to know in order to best help you. Firstly, the information a dispatcher will ask will seem like common sense, but in an emergency, it can be hard to recall. If you're aware of what you need to know beforehand, it'll be easier to remember when the dispatcher prompts you. And according to the Daviess County, Indiana website, you should be prepared to tell the dispatcher your location, your phone number, and what the emergency is and what type of assistance is needed. Essentially, the absolute basics for ensuring that the right type of response is sent to the right location, even when little else is known. Even if you don't know exactly where you are or what is going on, be as precise as possible. Even if it's just, I was driving south on the interstate. I remember seeing the exit for Federal Way a little while ago. I'm trapped in my car and I can't feel my legs. Responders are required to be familiar with the areas within their jurisdiction. So even general information can go a long way to helping somebody get the help that they need. Secondly, there is such a thing as too much information. First responders only need to know the most pertinent facts around the emergency. They do not need to know personal opinions, theories, or backstories. If the situation calls for it, the dispatcher will ask additional clarifying questions such as, has this happened before? That generally only require yes, no, or I don't know answers. Only provide additional information if it is directly relevant to the emergency at hand. However, the questions the dispatcher will ask will usually bring this information to light. So the best practice is to simply answer the questions. Now that you know when to call and what you need to know, let's discuss why it's important to listen to the dispatcher. Your dispatcher is trained to handle a variety of different emergency calls, so they are best equipped to assist you until police, medics, or firefighters arrive on scene. And you may not know this, but 911 dispatchers are considered the first responder, trained and accredited by the International Academy of Emergency Dispatch, an international nonprofit group dedicated to providing the most efficient assistance possible in any situation. According to the introduction of the International Academies of Emergency Medical Dispatch textbook, 6th edition, published in 2015, this group constantly and continuously revises and evaluates proposals from a user group of 55,000 people in 45 countries, as well as responding to changes in the medical community as medical research improves medical practices. This means that your dispatcher is the most up-to-date on the current practices and well qualified to provide any potentially life-saving directives. Additionally, 911 operators have earned their title, the calm voice in the dark. This is because they are trained and directed to remain calm, empathetic, efficient, and present amidst the chaos of an emergency. In fact, the emergency dispatch course manual provided during training specifies that the dispatcher is to minimize call gaps or silences, to focus on the message of the caller and not the tone of voice, to acknowledge the caller's emotion, and to use calming techniques throughout the call itself, all while practicing active listening skills. In short, your dispatcher is trained to be there for you, your unbiased guide to safer ground. Over the course of my speech today, we learned several important facts about calling 911 that could potentially save your life or someone else's. First, we learned when to call 911. Secondly, we covered what you need to know if and when you do need to call. And lastly, we were educated on why it's important to listen to the dispatcher. And now that we've learned the best practices when calling 911, I hope you feel better prepared for such an eventuality and trust the individuals that are there to guide and support you. Together, we can all be heroes. As Abraham Lincoln once said, next to creating a life, the finest thing a man can do is save one. Thank you.